Hello, welcome to this tutorial on Morse Deba, and today let's have a look at the pre-engineered building system, normally abbreviated as PEB or PEB, whichever name you prefer. But now if you take a look on the screen, I have my grid lines in place, and I'll assume this is now something not sophisticated if you've been following this channel or you've been a member of this channel for some time, because we've done this several times. But for now, I'll just double click on it so that you see the settings that I applied, and if you intend to apply the same on your settings. So I'll just double click. So on my right here, you can see I have the settings in place, the settings for the grid lines. Now that's all. I'll just minimize that. But on PEB, to create PEB or model PEB in Tekla structures, there are default tools that are available in Tekla, that are available in Tekla structures, and there are some special macros that helps you create the PEB building in a special way and in a quicker way. Now we have the PEB tools here. Now I want to use, first of all, the PEB still line to help me, to guide me through in creating the PEB members or the PEB building system. So I'm going to click on the PEB still line. So if I double click on the PEB still line, it's more like a grid line, but it gives a dummy shape of a rafter or of a portal frame, but just a guidelines to help you snap on the lines while creating the PEB members. So I have my settings in place. I have on parameters here, I have all these. I have the grid lines in place. So this defines the span of the PEB building. In this particular case, my building spans at 30 meters, though you can modify it to maybe 50, dependent on your structural design analysis. And for now, I'm going to apply only the 30 meters, and the half span is 15, and the eave height, I'm going to give it a 10. And also there's option here on the geometry on how you can set your pitch, or your pitch you can either select by height value or by slope. So we have this, we have the eave height and the ridge height. Our ridge height is 12 meters. The 12 meters from the center here all the way to the pitch here. That's 12 meters. Now that will define our slope. Now, if you come here on reference line, we have all this, because normally here we have, by default, you have 200, but I don't need any variance in terms of any variance on my line work. But this is enough for me. If you take on the gable, if you take a look on the gable side here, we have the gable columns. But for now, I'll just disable them. For now, I'll just go ahead and select no. I don't need gables on that side. And also a reference line I have on this end, I'll give it an okay. I'll give it a no all the way. And on the right wall offside, on the right wall, I need the same on the other side, on my left. So if I select not the same, it will not be the same on the other side. So let me first of all just go assume the settings I have are correct, and I'll go ahead and click modify, or go ahead and click apply. So if I click apply, you'll be able to see my cursor is active and is carrying some instructions to be applied in particular position. And also if you take a look at the bottom end here, you've been requested by Tekla structures just to pick a position so that we place the instructions there. So if we pick on that particular spot, we'll get the second instruction instructing us to please identify your second position. So we'll identify this position here as our second position. So if we click there, you'll be able to see we have the PEB still line in place. So this is just to guide us on how our rafters will slope, and the height of our eave columns. So if I double click on it once again, we can populate this grid line to the center to center distances of the grid. But for now, I just need to create the PEB, the eave and the rafters, then populate them along the length of that grid line. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to close this for now. I'll click on empty screen to deselect my PEB still. Now I'll come to PEB member here. This is where we'll get all the profile for the PEB building. So I'll click on the PEB member here. So the moment I click on the PEB member, I'll pick my first position right from the bottom end here and define the height of my column all the way to that spot. So if I right click and come to interrupt, I'll be able to terminate or get off that command. So if you take a look, we want the bottom end to be smaller, is somehow a tapered column. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to double click on it. So the moment I double click on it, I'll get a dialog properties for the PEB member, for this particular PEB member. So I want to turn it, but to turn it is just a best way to turn it. Instead of turning it, you just change the depth of this particular PEB member. So what we're going to do at the bottom end here, this is 900, and if I come here and I edit, I'll be able to confirm that. If I snap on the bottom end here, I'll be able to get this depth as 900. You can see that 900. Now we want to switch this, want to take this 900 up. So how do we do that? We just change this to 900. Change this to 900 instead of 600. So I'll change that to 600 now, and we'll click modify. And if you give it some time, it will be able to change. Just click modify. Double click on it once again. It didn't change, but let me just redo it. Select on that and click enter 600 and click modify. So if you modify, it will be able to change now. So we have our tapered frame in place for as a PEB member. So I'm going to close this. Another thing is when you place the PEB member, there are tools available here for repositioning or reorienting your PEB, your tapered column. So we have these tools here on the positioning. If I select, you can see this particular point. It points where the column snaps or along the grid line. You can select on this, but for now I want my PEB to snap at the edge, but this one I think is not the best way for it to. I think that is the best way. I just leave it at that. You can either pick at the center to let it snap at the center, and if you select on that, let's first of all select on it and pick where it should snap. I want that to snap at the center, but for now I want it to snap at the edge right there. So I'll click on that and click OK. Double click and click OK. Click modify and it will snap at the edge. Now I have this snapping at the edge. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to place my rafter. So I'll still come at the PEB member here and click and invoke the PEB member here. Then the moment I pick on that, I'll be able to go all the way through to this particular edge there and walk through this PEB still line to guide me on the location. You can see the pitch is at this particular point. So I'll just mouse over this and maybe just feed in maybe 3.5 meters and enter on that spot. So I'll double click on this. So the moment I double click on that, I'll be able to get the dialog box that contains the properties that will help me manipulate the properties of this particular rafter. So if I come here, I want to change the depths here. I'll come and switch this to 900 and switch this to 600 right here and give it an OK. If you apply and if you modify and apply, you'll be able to see that connects. And the next thing we are going to place is another member. So I'll come to PEB member here and just place my cursor right there and move all the way just move along this direction. So I'm going to place another member. I'm going to place another member right there, but this time round I'm going to give it a 55 or 6 meters. Just give it 65 or we can give it 6 meters. 6 meters is okay. Let's give it 6 meters right there, or 7 will be okay. So I'm going back and pick and change the length, and I'm going to give it 7 meters. Just mouse over and snap on a particular position and feed in your measurement right there, like 7, enter 7 right there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to double click on it and modify or customize it to adjust to my settings here. So I'll come here and change this to 900 and change this depth to 600 right here. So I'll give it an OK by clicking modify and apply, and give it an acceptance by clicking on OK button there. So this is how it looks. This is how it looks, but it's not the best arrangement we thought it should be. But I'm going to double click once again and modify it further. Let's give it some time to respond, and we'll switch back to 9 and give it 600 here and give it an OK by clicking modify and then come apply and give it an OK. Still not the best way. So normally what you do, we want to change this to just a conventional type of a PEB member. So we'll change this to 600 now. Change that to 600 and click modify, apply, and give it an OK right there. So we'll leave it at that. Then what we're going to do, we are going to create now the baseplate and create a connection for these two members. So what I'm going to do for now, I'll just right click and come to redraw and come to PEB here, and I want to create a joint here. I want to create a PEB connection here. So I'll select on this and select on that. So then once I select on that, you can see there's some slight of clash on this particular end. So what I'm going to do is very simple. I'm going to correct this particular connection to make it look more a standard way of doing it. So I'm going to come to PEB member updater and click on PEB member updater, and you'll see that connection recorrecting itself to the standard way of creating that connection at that end. So there are many ways of customizing this connection by just double clicking on it, and this dialog property of PEB knee. We have so many options of creating a connection here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus the parts. You can change the parts here by further defining the width of these plates and the thickness and the bolts positions. All of them are here. Like in this case, I want to add more bolts. What I'll do, just come here and feed in. Maybe I need 5 of them, and at 150 center to center, what I'll go just go ahead and click modify, and they will be adjusted immediately together with the stiffeners. So let's just default. Let's just maintain it at the previous setting and click modify and give it an apply and OK. And now what we're going to do next is to create an endplate connection here. So I'll come here. Let me just get a better tool to create that connection. I'm going to create a splice joint here, a splice connection by selecting splice, PEB splice, and I want to pick the main part. Pick the main component. Let's assume this is the main component. I want to connect to that. So you can see the connection is creating itself. And if I right click and come to redraw, you can see how that is created. So this is how you create your PEB connection. So adjusting all these, it's very simple. Just double click on it. Then once you double click on it, we'll have that. But don't worry, we are going to, in the coming days, I'm going to create a very intensive PEB training, and will be uploaded on the EME. So I'll come here and click on that, and we have that in place. So this is how you can create your connection. So let's move down to the bottom end here and place our baseplate. So I'll come to baseplate here. Click on PEB baseplate. So I'll select on the baseplate and snap right at the center there to create a baseplate. Right click and interrupt, and if you come to navigate and pick your rotation point, and you'll be able to see we have our base plate in place. But you can control all these. You can control all these bolts, or the position of the bolts and the arrangement of the stiffeners. Just this way. Just double click on it. So the moment you double click on it, you'll be able to have this dialog box, the base plate, the PEB base plate here. So how do you add more bolts and how do you add more stiffeners? I'll come to bolts here. So under bolts, I need probably, I don't need these extra bolts. I just need this mirrored to the other end. So to make sure you have the bolts I have in place, what you do, you just change this to 0. So if you leave it to 1, or maybe put 2 here, you'll be able to see, or put any dimension here, or maybe 100, center to center of those bolts, you'll have a double bolts on this far end. So what you do, just make this to 0, just to maintain it at 0, and at this end you can adjust the center distances of these bolts from this center to this center. This is 200, and maybe you just need one stiffener here. We have all the controls here to help you manipulate all this. So maybe I want to change the center of these bolts. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just come to bolts here and play around with this. Maybe I need 4 bolts. So I'll add 2 from this end and add 2 from this end. So by default, maybe I'll just add 2. You just type 2 there and enter a multiplication sign there, and then type there and feed in 1 there. So if I come to modify, you'll be able to see we have the bolts in place, a number of them, but we don't need such bolts center spaces. So what we'll do, just get rid of 1, get rid of the 2 here. Just get rid of it here by selecting that position, get rid of it. So I'm going to click modify, and the bolt position adjusts automatically with the stiffeners. So let's come to stiffeners here. If I come to stiffeners and I want to adjust the heights and the width of my stiffeners, I'll just come here and maybe feed 300, and we're able to see the stiffeners are adjusting to the dimensions that I've just fed in here. So if I take it back maybe to 200 right there, and come here and also adjust this to 200, the changes will be reflected at the bottom end of the column here. So that's how you adjust the settings on the base plate for the tapered column in PEB modeling. So if I come to special stiffeners here, under special stiffeners, we don't need any special stiffeners at the bottom end, so we don't need that. Grout holes, we don't need any grout hole, but we can modify that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk out of that settings of that dialog box and hide that, and right click and click on empty screen, right click and come to refresh or redraw. So I want to mirror this on the other end. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select everything here for now and press Control and deselect my PEB steel line and deselect the grid line. Now I want to mirror this, and to mirror this, we have advantage that our work plane tool is at the global position. So what you just need to just right click and come to you come to special copy and click mirror. So we want to use this spot and this spot as our mirror line to mirror that component on the other direction. So if we click copy, we'll see whether it has been mirrored on this section. So we have some clashes. You can see here if you come to navigate, and you can see that our rafter is all the way off the location, the best location we thought it should be on. So what we are going to do, we are going to correct it just right now. So we always come to PEB tool here, and what we do, just click on the PEB member updater and click on the PEB member updater, and this will try to correct that. So if it doesn't correct, just click undo, and what you do, we try and adjust the position of this particular rafter. Double click on it, and what you wait for is the dialog box for this particular rafter. So what you do here, you come and change the orientation Like you can see, this is pointing upward. So it is not actually connecting this in terms when Tekla try to read and place the right connection. So I'm going to change the orientation on the position of this rafter. So this was the position, and I want to give that to correct that connection. So if I click modify, it will be able to correct that automatically. So we'll give it time, and that has been created. And I'll do the same thing here. If I double click on this, and what I'm going to change its orientation in terms of its orientation relative to the just opposite rafters that we mirrored it from. So once I've double clicked on this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick the opposite. I'm going to pick on that and click modify. So if I click that, I'll apply and give it an OK, and boom, we are on the right track. So if I come to navigate here and try rotate this, we are now remaining with the pitch. So we want to place a PEB member here. So we have two options of creating this end. So what I'm going to do, I'll come to PEB tools here and pick on this. We have these options: PEB bridge rafter by 3 points, which tends to somehow complicated if you're new. If you're just getting started with Tekla structures, you might find that really cracking your brain or cracking your head. So or you always pick this if you find that a little bit sophisticated. So pick on PEB bridge rafter by 2 rafters. So select on this. So this gives us a choice on picking the only 2 rafters, and this pitch will be created right at the center. So what we are going to do, we are going to click pick. So this will give us instructions on ask us to pick the left. Like at the bottom end here, you can see pick the left rafter. So we are going to pick the left rafter and just drag this down so that you see what's going on here. We've picked the right. Now, we've picked the left. Now we are going to the right rafter. So the moment you pick on the right rafter and just give it some time, you'll be able to see this pitch has been created, and just go ahead and close it. So right click and come to redraw, and you'll be able to see that this has been created in place and it's really meshing well. And if it doesn't mesh well, please try and reposition this. So it's always advisable you create your joint here. So we'll come to Splice connection here. We'll come to Splice connection, and we'll pick this as the main member and connect it to this. So you see how the connection clashes. So what you're going to do, this is setting from the right. So we are going to apply this. We're going to delete this for now. We're going to delete that. Then come on this end and pick on the splice, PEB splice, and pick that as the main part and this as the secondary part, and still not connecting properly. And normally if it doesn't appear but is the right connection, just come here and update that connection, and it will be corrected automatically. Just give it some time, and it's not picking the best way it should. Now let's delete that and come back to Splice and pick this now as a main member and that as secondary member, and that is connecting perfectly well. And if you come to navigate and rotate this, you can see that. Now if you come to this far end, if you pick on the splice and you pick this as the main member and that as secondary member, and that connection is created perfectly well, and that is the best way to do it. So let's zoom closer and double click on this particular splice connection, and you see the settings here. So if I click on the balls, you can see how I adjusted that, and that's how you create that. You can play around with the number of balls and with the size and the width of these plates by adjusting all this. By adjusting or coming to parts and change all this, the width and the thickness, you just feed in right there. The stiffeners positions, you can always change the heights of your stiffeners, but they should be matching, or change the height of the stiffeners relative to the width or the length of the end plates here. They should always be connecting to that. That is the rule of that. So if I zoom out and come to navigate, and I want to rotate this. And since I have everything in place and everything now is perfect and well done, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click and come to interrupt and right click once again and redraw and select on everything. Once I select of everything, and I want to isolate the grid line and also isolate the steel PEB line, PEB steel line. So I'm going to right click and take into account the measurements of my grid line. I created the columns. I created the grid intersections to intersect at 6 meters, 6 meters center to center. So those will be the positions of my tapered column. So I'm going to pick on the special copy and pick linear. So under linear, I'm going to pick, prior to invoking the copy command, always check the position of the XYZ. So especially on the X and Y. So in this particular case, our X is pointing in this direction, and you actually intend to populate this along the X axis. Now we'll come to X axis, and since it's moving on the positive direction, we don't need to prefix this 6 meters with a negative sign. And if I zoom out, how many copies of this PEB member or PEB frame or this frame you need? In this particular case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So in this particular case, we have one already in place. So we just need to feed in here 9. So always make sure the remaining axes are always at 0. If you're doing anything at a particular axis, make sure the rest remains at 0, or maybe if they have any dimension, Tekla structure will try to, there will be a complete clash because it's getting a wrong direction. It's getting confused because this says this defining this and that defining that. So let's have one particular dimension, this particular end. So just go ahead and click copy and give it some time to populate all that along this direction. So let's just give it some time to populate that. And there we are, and our frames have been populated along the length of our preference. So if I go ahead and click OK now, and click on left click on empty screen, right click and click redraw to refresh everything or to remove anything that you might think it's clogging your modeling or your drawing. So this is what we have in place. We have all this populated on the right way. So if I come to navigate and also turn that, and you might ask me why this connection is somehow different with the PEB tool. What I just did, just double click here and change the class of the steel. Just double click. I've double clicked already, but I'm just waiting for it to bring up the dialog box. So what you can do, change the color here. You just change the class. When you come to parts, under parts we have class here. You can change that. Class changes the color. If I come to assembly, you can change all that. You come to parameters and change the class here. Come to parts and change these classes to a color of your preference by giving a different color. So let me just close that and come here, navigate, and try rotate this. So that's how you can create a simple pre-engineered building system, or PEB or PEB. And thanks a lot for watching this video, and let's meet then. And we are planning to create a very intensive training on PEB building system, and we'll update you when that is ready. Bye bye, and thank you. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I'm Maurice Kimba.